Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this training session or this workshop here called Building Your Research Poster. My name is Matt Saldana, and I work for the Teaching, Learning, and Professional Development Center, but I also work with a program here that we call the Presentation and Communication Effectiveness, or PACE program. And essentially what we do with PACE is we help get undergraduate students ready for their conference presentations, whether they're posters or podium presentations, or they're doing some sort of oral presentation in front of a group. We do that for undergraduate students who are going to a conference like the Undergraduate Research Conference, or perhaps any other conference that you may be invited to. So if anything like that ever comes up again, feel free to reach out. We'd love to help get you prepared for those conferences. But for today, we are going to be talking specifically about building your research poster. Now, this, of course, could be for any conference or anywhere that you're invited to present a poster. And these are some really good tips on how to effectively build your poster as you get ready for that conference. Okay, so real quick, the basic elements of the poster are pretty much going to be the same everywhere. And when we talk about elements, the three big things that we'll always talk about are going to be font, as well as graphics, and any color, background colors, things like that that you may want to consider, particularly if you are going to use this poster at different conferences, or if you plan on printing this poster out, which most of the time you will do. So how you structure some of your background colors may be something that you want to consider as you're preparing your poster. So starting off first, the font. So in most cases, you'll have some kind of template, or you can have something that's kind of pre-prepared. But either way, the one thing that you want to do is make sure that the font is a readable font. And typically we see most posters font as Arial or Times New Roman. It doesn't necessarily need to be either of those, but you do want to make sure that it is readable font. So one of the things to consider or to think about is the I's and the L's. So an uppercase I may look like a lowercase L. And in that instance, if you do happen to use a font that has that kind of image that may change a word that you're writing, or maybe make it unreadable or maybe confusing. And we certainly want to avoid that wherever possible. So one good thing that you can do is stick to one of these fonts here, either Arial or Times New Roman. But realistically, one way that you can kind of check for readability is to type out the information on your poster, and zoom in on a section, and then take your laptop screen or your computer screen or wherever you're typing this, and then set it back, maybe take a few steps back, try to create 3 to 4 feet of space between you and the screen itself, and look at it. Are there things, maybe letters that could be confusing? Are there maybe letters that are kind of small or kind of hard to read, things like that? Those are the things that you want to look for. Because in most poster presentations, folks are going to be, between 3 to 5, maybe 6 feet away from the poster. They're generally not going to be close enough to the poster that they could look at really small fonts, or maybe look at maybe kind of confusing fonts itself. So those are some things that you certainly want to think about. In terms of the size of your font, 72 point or larger for your poster titles. And this is generally going to be your big title. So at the top of your poster, you're going to have your title. That's what you want to be as big as you can possibly make it. Now, again, there are some caveats to that. If you happen to have a really long title to your poster, you might need to make it a little bit smaller, but you really want that title of your poster to stand out, because that's really what people are going to look at first, and then they're going to start looking through the poster itself. So you want to make sure that title is as large as it can possibly be. For your section titles, so this would be like, you have an abstract, an introduction, conclusions, references, those kinds of things. Those would be between 36 and 54 point. And you want to kind of start big, and then if your poster gets maybe too crowded or things just aren't looking right, then you can start to shrink that size down. But I would make sure that at the very least, your section titles are bigger than the body of the text. So for example, you would want introduction to be bigger than the actual written text for that introduction. Okay, and so kind of a tip there for the body of the text between 20 and 24 and 30 point. You could go as small as 20 point, but really you would want to try to avoid that, mainly because once you start to get to that size, then regardless of the font itself, whether it's Arial, Times New Roman, or whatever you may be using, it gets a little bit more difficult to see once you start to get to that 20 point and smaller from a 6-foot distance. So that's something that you want to think about as you're preparing your poster. One great tip that you can kind of think about is to start with those larger titles. Start as large as you can get, right? So we'll start with 72 point for our big poster title, and then we'll start at 54 point for our section titles, and then that 30 point for the text within the body. And then once we've written what we've written, then we can kind of make adjustments there as it needs to be. But you want to make sure that that text is large enough that you would be able to see it at a distance of between 3 to 6 feet. I wouldn't necessarily worry if it's any further than that, because then at that point, if somebody's that far away, it's probably a better chance that they're looking at titles before they start to engage the actual poster itself. So again, that 72 point for your title should definitely be there. All right, graphics. So graphics are something that I think are great for posters, because on your poster, you only have a certain amount of space, right? This isn't a paper. This isn't an opportunity for you to just add every single thing onto a poster. Your poster is going to have a limitation as far as size goes, right? And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But graphics can really help you kind of convey that message without using so many words, sorry. So the big one here is avoid any of those low resolution graphics, because they tend to not scale up very well. And low resolution graphics typically come from something on the internet. So if you are doing some research on cacti and you have a great picture from the internet of the plants that the cacti that you are researching, and you want to put that on your poster, once you start to scale that up, the resolution will start to pixelate, and it'll be difficult to see the actual image. All right, so one good way to do that is to use pictures that maybe you've taken with your own camera, your own phone, something like that, because those will typically take images that do scale really well. You do want to try to do that in full resolution as much as possible. It's easier in almost every instance to take a large picture and scale it down. It's almost impossible to take a small image and scale it up, particularly anything that you have gotten from the internet. If it's a picture of plants, an animal, something like that, that may not work best. So again, the suggestion here would be to use a picture that you have taken yourself, so that you can kind of look at those resolutions and kind of scale those up as you need to, so that the image does look good as you put it on your poster. Another thing to consider here, make sure that your graphics do have good color contrast for printing. And this would mainly be for things like charts and graphs. If you're going to have two contrasting points. So let's say you're doing some research on fertilizer A versus fertilizer B, and you want to show that fertilizer A is a better fertilizer for this region than fertilizer B, and you're putting that on a chart, and one line goes up and one line goes down. You want to make sure that those are color contrasting colors. Okay, so maybe you have a red going up and a blue going down, or something along those lines. That way, when somebody looks at your poster from a distance, they can tell what's going on, right? So Again, one of the things, of course, that you can do here to kind of practice this and check for that is, of course, have your graphic, push the screen back away from you, take a couple steps back. Again, think about that 3 to 6 foot distance from the poster, okay? Because that's generally what we see as being a good way to gauge that without having to print out your poster several times. Okay, so certainly think about those graphics. And another really good thing that you can probably do is consider the charts and the graphs that you're going to put on your poster. What is the background color of those of that particular chart or graph? Is it a high contrast? Is it if it's anything that is like maybe a dark blue background or maybe a black background with white lines, right? Those can be a little bit difficult to see once they're printed out, right? So think about that. Think about that as you're going to print that out, what that may look like. Because once you print that out, you'll see that, and it might not look great. And one of the bigger issues that we typically see when you print something that is heavy color, it will make your that graph or that piece of the poster look wavy. So that kind of takes us into our next point, the background. Plain. For almost any conference that you're going to take a poster to, as plain as possible, right? Like much like these slides here, plain. We have a white background, a black text, and that is pretty much what we would recommend for your background. And if you do a color, we do know that once you print that out, because the paper that you're printing on is white, it'll have to absorb a lot of that color on the paper, and so it will come out and it will actually look wavy. So I mean, it's at the end of the day, of course, it will probably look okay, but if your paper doesn't dry, or maybe you are rushing to print and you're having to do it the day of, or something along those lines, that may look, your poster might not look good. And of course, we want those posters to look good, so that whenever we're presenting them, we're presenting a very well put together poster, not just the information that's on it, but also just in terms of how it looks. Okay, and in most cases, I know for this for the undergraduate research conference, there is some prizes being awarded. So again, that is something that you want to consider, right? If we're going to have this poster put up against upwards of hundreds of other posters, we want ours to stand out because it looks great, both content and its actual visuals. Okay, so again, simple rule of thumb here: avoid any sort of color on your background, especially for something that you're going to print. So templates, generally, there are a number of templates available. There, of course, would be some little tips that we'll talk through with those templates. The first one being is to just check to see what's available. There are most of the labs will probably have some template or something that they prefer that you use. So this would be something that you would want to check with your mentor. And usually the templates are pretty easy to download. They're most of them, well, we'll go with that. Most of them are in a PowerPoint slide, so it's easy to kind of zoom in and type and change that information. You can move boxes around. That tends to be a lot easier to do. I have seen some poster templates in Word, and that can be a little difficult to move things around, just depending on how that's set up. But most of your templates that you'll find will be on a PowerPoint slide similar to this, so that you're able to kind of move boxes around, take boxes away, make things bigger, smaller, however you need to do that is readily available. So certainly check with your mentor to see if there is one available. Also, make sure that your template is updated. A few years ago, Texas Tech decided to go with some different graphics than had been used in the past. So you want to make sure that your templates are as updated as possible. You can certainly check with your mentor on any of the logos. You can also check with the conference organizers on those logos to make sure that you have the most up-to-date logos and making sure that you are using the proper ones. If it does have a template, you also make sure that if there are graphics in terms of acknowledgements for that lab, you want to make sure that you have those on the poster as well, and making sure that that is representative of your actual lab or your team or whatever that may be. Because we want to make sure that we are acknowledging the folks who are supporting your research, and whether it's the ones who are funding that research or the ones who are, lending their expertise, your mentors, however that may be. So you want to make sure that you have those acknowledgements. And usually when we see those, typically they tend to be maybe a small graphic on the bottom, or maybe on the top somewhere, but it is some way that they would like to see that lab or that foundation, if it happens to be something like that, that is acknowledged. You'll also need to make sure that if there's any language that they want, like we would like to acknowledge the Pay Center for their supports in this research, right? If there's something specific that you need to have on that, make sure that it's on that template. And if it's not, you want to make sure that you add that as soon as possible. That way, you know where the space is going to be, and maybe where you can, kind of what's a little bit more what your constraints may be based on the things that you need to have on that template. Okay, templates should be the appropriate size, generally 3 foot by 4 foot or 4 foot by 3 foot, and in landscape. So you'll want to see that on that template, but you also want to double check with your conference organizers. They may have a space that is larger or smaller or something along those lines. So you want to make sure that it's that is the landscape, or if it's portrait, that's something that you'll definitely want to check with. I do know that for this particular conference, the URC is you'll have a 4x4 space. So as long as your poster fits within that space, you will be good to go. All right. But most templates are generally going to be 3 foot tall, 4 foot long. And so that's something that would fit perfectly well into that space. All right, so again, kind of to give you an idea of what a template might look like, here's one here. Again, you'll see at the very top, we do have the large text there. This would be our long title. We'd also, of course, have our authors' names. And on this one, we do have a logo, the Double T logo up top. That would certainly change based on your lab or your college or whatever that may be. So make sure that you have those logos available to you. We do have official logos, official Texas Tech logos. If you need those, that information can certainly be shared with you. So make sure that you do have the right logos, right? So that's one thing that we do want to make sure, a message that we continue to provide for you guys out there. So again, kind of to look at this poster, typically what we see in terms of how folks will look at a poster, they typically tend to start at the top. So they usually start, if you're looking at this poster, you're going to start in that top left-hand box, the box that says title. These text boxes are for information such as abstract, introduction, references, illustrations, methodology. That would generally be where your abstract would be, maybe an introduction. And you'll see eyes tend to go diagonally. So you'll start at that left hand, your eyes will drift to the middle, and generally in the middle, we have a sample illustration there, but this would be where you would want to put your charts, your graphs, your images, if you have those, because that tends to be the hot zone, right? That tends to be where people will look at your poster the most, whether they're trying to figure out how those results, how to interpret those results, or how those results may affect something that they're doing, or if it's something that maybe they didn't think was possible. I mean, there could be any number of reasons why somebody would look at that information, but that would be somewhere where you would want to put your good images, your good graphics, charts, things like that. That would be a great spot for that. And then the eyes continue to drift diagonally down towards the bottom right, where you have your conclusions, some references, if that's what you have on your poster. So typically what most people are looking at is they're kind of looking at at the very top left, kind of what you're doing, what it is you're kind of, what is you're researching, and then they'll look at kind of the results and then look down at some sort of conclusion. And if any of that along the way piques their interest, then they'll tend to kind of look at the other things, whether it's your methods or your reasoning or whatever else you may have on there. Then that's kind of where they'll tend to jump around. But realistically, most folks who are going to look at a poster are going to start at that top left, look through the middle, and then down to that bottom right, where those conclusions are at. So those are the hot zones that you want to make sure your best information is available there. All right, so some tips real quick. You know, we definitely want you to have someone check for spelling and clarity. And this is best done by somebody who is not in the lab. Maybe it's a friend or somebody else who has really no idea really what you're working on, so they can't maybe interpret things, maybe something that you're trying to say. We want somebody to look at it to make sure that spelling and clarity are good for the audience. And in this particular conference, this is an interdisciplinary conference. So you're going to have folks who are going to be specialists and folks who are non-specialists looking at this information. So you really want to look at it through that lens. If somebody has no idea what we're talking about, how can we convey that message to them? All right, and that's a great way to think about it whenever you have someone checking for spelling and clarity. Be prepared to print your poster more than once. I've seen this happen time and time again. Folks have their poster, they think it's great, everything looks good, they print it out, they look at the very top and they've spelled the name wrong, or they have spelled something incorrectly. And so you should be prepared to print that more than once. And as soon as you get your poster, as soon as you get the actual paper printed poster, that's when you take a look at it, you scrutinize it, you look at it, you hang it up on the wall if you need to. That's the best time to do that, because then you'll catch all of those little mistakes that you may have missed while you're looking at it on the digital version on your laptop. Those things happen. It's just kind of part of poster printing. Once you print something out, you can't go back and change it. So that is something that you should be prepared for. And part of being prepared for that is to identify your printing location to avoid the rush and the hassle. And by doing that, that will allow you to have enough lead time to get your poster printed. In some instances, these posters may take a couple of days, maybe a week to print out and be available, just depending on the location. So that is something that you do need to consider. If you are going to wait until kind of the day before, or the day, hopefully not the day of, but kind of wait until the latest time that you can to print out your poster, you may find that the cost may go up, and also you may only get one opportunity to print that out. So if there is some sort of mistake or error on that printed poster, you may or may not have the opportunity to go back and correct that mistake. Also know where you can print your poster. Now, we do have a few options listed here. The Print Bureau at the College of Architecture, that's on the 9th floor. They do a really, really good job. If you know folks who do architecture work, they have huge plans. So they are comfortable with printing those out. They will require that you go through their website. So make sure that you're looking at that to do that. You can also utilize the printing center at the Health Sciences Center. Now, from personal experience, I would tell you that this is an option that is available, but that you will need more time to get that poster to you. FedEx would probably be the backup option, mainly because of cost. Looking at the cost of the Print Bureau and the printing center, you're looking at about $10 for the poster to print those out. If you go somewhere like FedEx or anywhere else off campus, then you're starting to look a little bit more at $30, maybe $40. I know FedEx starts their printing prices for posters that size at $39. So the pricing is of course a concern. So we definitely want to make sure that you have, and especially if you have to print this more than once, $39, $40, whatever that may come out to, for each poster that you're having to print out, that cost is going to add up. So make sure that you have those locations identified. I do also know that Human Sciences has a printing center on the 3rd floor that you can utilize as well. But again, whatever you decide to use, wherever you decide to print your poster out, make sure that you have enough time to get that poster printed so that you can review your poster beforehand. So that way, if you do need to print off an additional poster for whatever reason, you do have that time to do that. So that's a great piece of information there for you in terms of being able to print that poster out. So I do also have an opportunity here for you to ask me any questions that you may have. So typically the questions that we get for a poster building type questions are, where should I put things? Where do I organize things? How do I do a new text box? Those kinds of things. We can certainly help you with that. One thing that typically we see is that if your poster is going to have boxes, which we generally recommend, usually you'll have at the very top, in the top left, again, an abstract, an introduction, something along those lines. Then you'll definitely want to have a discussion of your methods, how you did the research, whether you did that in a lab, whether you did that in the field, how you kind of went about collecting your data. You'll definitely want to describe your data using some words, and you can also use charts and graphs there as well. But your charts and your graphs should really be about your results, because that is going to really be something that most people are interested in. Then most research conferences, most folks will have questions about results, whether they were what you thought they would be, or they weren't what you thought they would be. They really want to see those results, and those are really done well, or that message of your results is really conveyed very well in a graphical or picture form. And so that generally tends to be what most people are looking for. And you'll probably find that most of your questions that you get will be based on the results that you got. So if you have a way to kind of put that there that people can look at it, again, that's a good spot for that, is in the middle of the poster, where that is what would be the ultimate hot zone, right? Because you're going to look right at that middle of that poster. So that's something that you would definitely want to put there. And of course, you want to have your conclusions, anything that you may do for the future. Certainly something that you want to have there as well. That way people know that whether maybe this is an ongoing study, or perhaps this is a study that would be, here's our study, this is what we did. Fertilizer A is better than fertilizer B, and that's where it ends. You definitely want to make sure that you have that in your conclusions as well. We also do have a couple of other opportunities here. We do have a presentation or a workshop, on kind of how to think about the information that you're going to put on that poster. So this one is more about just the build. This is what it should look like. This is how I should organize that. It assumes that there is no template available, but we do also have some available on the TLPDC website. If you're interested in that, please feel free to shoot me an email and I can send that your way. That way you'll have at least something that you can kind of work with. But if there are questions about the actual building of the PowerPoint, or sorry, not the PowerPoint, of the poster itself, that's in the PowerPoint slide, feel free to reach out. And if you could put in your subject line, URC, or Undergraduate Research Conference, that way that I know that this is a question that is important. So I'll make sure that I get to that one as quickly as possible. We also want to make sure that folks know that we have not only another workshop on the information that goes inside those boxes on your poster, but also an opportunity to practice that poster presentation coming up as well. So feel free to reach out to either myself or the organizers of the Undergraduate Research Conference if you have any questions that are pertain to this particular conference. So hopefully everybody found this information useful. But again, if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out. And again, my name's Matt. Hope to hear from y'all, and good luck. I can't wait to see what everybody puts together. All right. Thanks, everyone. And bye-bye.